Hi, my name is Aidan Kohn-Murphy. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am born and raised in Washington, D.C., but now I'm a sophomore at Harvard. And I am the founder of an organization called GenZ for Change. I'll popcorn it over to Sophia.
Hi everyone, I'm Sophia Ongele. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Santa Cruz, which is a suburb of LA. It's like if you know where Six Flags is, I live near Six Flags. And I currently go to school at Columbia University. I'm a senior there. And yeah, so I'm in New York City and I'm gonna popcorn it to Zamaan.
Thank you, Sophia. Hi, everyone. My name is Zamaan Qureshi. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a rising senior at American University. I'm from the suburbs of Chicago, and I co-chair a youth coalition called Design It For Us, where we're focused on protecting kids and teens online through state and federal policy.
Hi, I'm Avalon. I go to Barnard College and I am on the Sustainable Media Center Board of Directors, and I'm involved with various other tech policy, ethics, social media stuff.
I'm on a Trauberman. I use she, her pronouns. I'm originally from the Northern Virginia area, right outside Washington, D.C., but currently live in New York City and went to college at Colgate University. I will popcorn it to Maia.
Hi y'all, I'm Maia. I use pronoun she series, located in New York. I go to grad school at Fordham, and also here representing Juve Consulting. Yeah, I'll popcorn it to Sabine.
Hi, I'm Sabine. I use she, they pronouns. I both grew up and also currently live in the Northern Virginia area. I work at Institute for Strategic Dialogue, which does research on extremists and that are domestic, homegrown, and to Parker.
Hi everyone, my name's Parker. I use she, her pronouns. I am originally from Chicago. I am at Stanford Law School, and I will pass to Sonia, sorry.
You're all good. My name is Sonia Abel. I live in New York City in Brooklyn, and I just started my senior year of high school at Brooklyn Technical High School, and I'm with YVote, and I'll pass it to Mukilan.
Hi everyone, my name is Mukilan Muthukumar. I use he, him pronouns. I'm also from New York. I'm a rising senior at Hunter College High School in New York City, and I represent YVote also. And I'll pass it to Olivia.
Hi everyone, I'm Olivia. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm from Santa Barbara, California, but I'm currently a sophomore at Harvard, like Aidan. And I'm the founder of the Cramm, which is a news outlet for Gen Z. And I'll popcorn it to Kyle. Have we gotten Kyle yet?
No. I'm Kyle, he, him pronouns. I'm a junior in high school. Oh, who hasn't gone yet? Oh, Connor.
Hi, I'm Connor. I use he, him pronouns. I'm originally from a suburb of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I'm currently a sophomore at Vassar College. And then Arden.
Hey, I'm Arden. I just finished high school and I'm going to be starting undergrad at Stanford in a few days. And I'm originally from New York.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you, Senator Booker, for joining us today. I'm Stephen Rosenbaum. I'm the Executive Director of the Sustainable Media Center. Now, some of you won't remember this, but Cory Booker has been a leader and intrepid explorer in the world of social media long before most of us knew what Twitter even was. He was the mayor of Newark, and Twitter was his way of keeping connected with his constituents, and he was awesome as a social media mayor. So today, the Sustainable Media Center is an intergenerational group of media entrepreneurs, makers, consumers, creators, more than 150 of us. And together we're fighting to get platforms and brands to embrace economic models that don't profit from amplifying hate, misinformation, anti-Semitism, and racism. We believe that amplification of content that is tuned to impact mental health of young people has got to stop. So we're glad you're all here. And we're about to hand this over to Aidan Kohn-Murphy, who has volunteered to moderate what I know will be a free-flowing conversation. So with that, Aidan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Steve. So excited to be here. So hi, everyone. My name is Aidan Kohn-Murphy, and I'm the founder of an organization called GenZ for Change. And I'm really focused on building generational power for Gen Z, which is the most progressive and most diverse generation in history. So I'm so excited today that we're joined by Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey. Senator Booker has been a constant advocate and a fierce advocate for criminal justice reform, LGBTQ plus equality, climate justice, reproductive freedoms, and kind of all of the issues that Gen Z holds so dear. Senator Booker was also one of the original co-sponsors of the Green New Deal and Medicare for All. And we're so excited to have the senator here for a free-flowing conversation. Think of this as a roundtable, and we're so excited to hear your questions and really get into some dialogue. So for the first question, Gen Z is very focused on breaking norms, bringing in progressive values to more established spaces. And disrupting the status quo. So Senator Booker, I'd ask you, are you a disruptor, and if so, how?
First of all, I can't tell you how great it is to be in conversation with everybody today, and I'll say even more so to be in community with folks today. We definitely are in a culture where you see so much of the straining and stressing forces on the fabric of our communities. That the people who repair that or consciously cultivate community, to me, are more needed than ever before. And the fact that many of you are doing it on your social media platforms, making people who often feel isolated or put down or not included, the fact that you're creating community, helping people feel seen, affirmed, engaged, activated, it's extraordinary. So I'm pretty psyched to be on with you now. Look, one of the things I found out when I was studying in college was how young people were at the center of every major movement around the time I was there, from the civil rights movement to the anti-apartheid movement. Young people are at the center of great movements for social change. And one of my great heroes, Alice Paul, who was a suffragist from New Jersey, who was the first person ever to protest in front of the White House. Think about that. The first person to ever stand in front of the White House to protest was eventually heckled because she was protesting a wartime president, Woodrow Wilson, put in jail, went on a hunger strike before Gandhi, before King, force-fed, stuck tubes down her throat, but eventually changed public opinion dramatically, was a young person. And so I tried to pattern my whole career out of finding ways to take things that people are too accepting of, injustices, and to shake them up. I'm at the 25th anniversary of my time in public life. I started being the youngest person ever elected in my city as a city council person. And immediately I realized that if I did play by the rules of a city council person, I may not be able to shake things up as much. And we began doing a lot of crazy stuff just to try to highlight the absurdity of a lot of the injustices we were fighting. And so I went on a 10-day hunger strike in an area underneath a highway overpass going into the wealthiest suburbs in New Jersey, arguably in our nation. But people would often come up, buy drugs in our communities and get right back on. And we disrupted the drug trade and brought national attention to the absurdity of having these spaces that nobody cares about or visits, or the media cares about unless somebody's shot. Then I moved into a mobile home and said, I'm going to really represent my community, so I'm going to live in a minivan, a sort of a beat up Winnebago, and began to notice in my career that the more I did the unexpected, the more I was able to do things that were shaking people up, because a lot of folks, I think, get tuned out from our political civic spaces. I wanted to try to excite and energize people to say that there's a different way, that we have agency and more power than we realize. And that's carried through my time as mayor, if you're interested in those stories. But now as a senator, a lot of what I try to do is try to think of issues that should be at the center of American thought, but often are just not getting the focus or attention they should. And so from environmental justice issues, a lot of folks were focused on climate change when I got here 10 years ago, but I didn't understand that there were communities, often communities of color, that were most being impacted, that the climate change wasn't something far away. It was immediate now, and I wanted to find ways to highlight these unjust areas. A lot of it is our food system. Most Americans do not know that 1 out of every $3 in all of our federal government is spent on healthcare. And it is for diet-related diseases, because we have these food systems that are designed to make us sick, and then the pharmaceutical companies profit off of our pain and our misery. And the absurdities within our, we're doing a farm bill now, that we have only 7% of our agricultural subsidies go to the food that doctors, nutritionists, and others tell us we should eat the majority of, fruits and vegetables. The rest of it goes to these highly processed, sugar-filled foods, which is why my kids in Newark walk into a bodega and they find a Twinkie product cheaper than an apple. Not because of the true costs, but because our government is picking winners and losers. There's these big monopolistic food companies, and not picking the health, well-being, and access to fresh, healthy food. So a lot of what I try to do now is trying to get people to look at an issue a different way, or discover some of the issues that are at the center of the challenges we have in our nation.
So Sophia, I know that you had a question about one of those issues that's really pressing, one of the most pressing issues that's facing our time, and so I want to throw it over to you.
Thank you so much, Aidan. Were you talking about the climate one, or because I was
leaving that one up to you.
Well, wherever you want to go, Sophia.
Yeah, I was prompting you.
Word. Okay. Let's think.
Hey, Sophia, where are you physically located now? Like,
I am physically located in New York City. I'm not.
That's like a big place. Like, where in New York?
That's true. I am in Morningside Heights.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where I'm currently. I go to school at Columbia, which is very exciting. I'm a senior, not at Harvard. I don't know if that wins any brownie points with you. But in any case, my question, despite our physical location in the United States, I feel like it's been affirmed a lot that injustice anywhere begets injustice everywhere, as posited originally by MLK. I mean, perhaps not originally, but very clearly posited by MLK. More specifically, that we're tied together in a single garment of destiny. And this has been top of my mind a lot, namely as our generation has embraced concepts like mutual aid, which rose to mainstream prominence a lot during the height of the pandemic and the racial reckonings that we saw in the summer of 2020. But at the same time, there's been places like Atlanta where people are using mutual aid to like fight against things like Cop City, when now that what has long been a tried and true organizing technique is being likened to like racketeering and being used to repress movements that we hold dear. And so, because this is especially dangerous when we're like, people are saying that the US is in like a backsliding democracy. So all of that going to this central question, how can we as a generation remain really steadfast in our values and continue fighting for justice, specifically in the face of what we're now seeing as fascistic power grabs and political repression?
I mean, the first thing goes back to the original theme I said. I mean, you're reading words that King wrote in the letters from the Birmingham jail. And so this dude in April of this dude, Martin Luther King, in April of 1963, was locked up in Birmingham and wrote these powerful letters in response, not to sort of racists who were against segregation. He was writing in response to his critics from people who wanted integration, but were kind of questioning his radical tactics of coming in and bringing out all of this conflict and controversy. And he pushed back on them and said that. He said, look, I'm in Birmingham. I may not be from here, but injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, and how connected we are. But the reason why I bring that up to you as a Gen Z person is to understand King now is in his 30s. He comes out of jail and his tactics weren't working in Birmingham. And it was young people that went to King, James Bevel, Dorothea Cotton, these young people that said to him, change your tactics. And you have not allowed young people in high school and grade school to participate in these marches. And next thing he did, and Taylor Branch in his Pulitzer Prize-winning book calls it the children's miracle. These young people organized like hundreds and hundreds of children to march in front of Bull Connor, who opened up fire hoses on them. It was the first time in the modern civil rights movement that any jails had been full, and they were full of children. They had to get school buses to carry them there. And then they did it again. And this time, some of those iconic pictures of the civil rights movement, King released dogs. Bull Connor released dogs on the children. And that was it. It so shocked the conscience of our country that it expanded their moral imagination and took them out of comfort and got them into agitation and becoming a part of the activism. And the reason why I say that, because I think about, that's one of my favorite moments in American history. Because first of all, it was young innovators that found a way to go viral, to become a national story because of something that even King wasn't thinking of. And what they were able to accomplish was something that King criticized. He said, what we have to repent for in this day and age is not the vitriolic words and violent actions of the bad people, but the appalling silence and inaction of the good people. You guys call yourself progressives, but I say that with quotes around it because I actually think your views are very mainstream. What I mean by that is that if you polled Gen Z, millennials, and my Gen X, and asked them about these issues that you are passionately fighting for, you would find that the overwhelming majority of us agree with them. The challenge is not the people always standing opposing us. It's that we haven't figured out a way to get more people off the sidelines and into the arena. The artistry that you all, and I've watched some of your incredible social media platform. You guys are all the ones I've looked at are incredible innovators already. And my challenge to you is not just to be the issue based. And Sophia, I watched one of yours. You share a lot of the issues that I care about: criminal justice reform, telling the truth about our history. But what I challenge you to do is to find ways to break through this fractured media environment with so much distracting people, lulling us into to surrender to cynicism about the system, to give up our sense of agency and power, and remind people that they are the leaders we're looking for, and find a way to trigger more people into activism.
So Maia, I think that's something that the senator touched on is something that you kind of wrote a question about protecting history, specifically Black history, and really making that a forefront of education.
Yeah, that is certainly something that's top of mind, but I almost even want to expand out a bit, just because education is something that's been on my mind heavy in 2023, given a lot of conversations that we have about affirmative action, about Black history, about EDIB, et cetera. And as someone who fundamentally believes that she would not be on calls like this without her education, and had to get in a lot of debt to do that, but was willing and ready to do that, and understanding the implications of doing that, that is definitely something I wanted to ask you about, Senator, more specifically. How do we preserve a accessible and equitable education, given the conversations that we're having, especially around affirmative action, but not necessarily having the conversation around legacy? That is definitely something that's top of mind for me.
Well, I think that, again, I just see the world, the universe, perhaps, between, in humanity, two forces, us versus them, and just us. I want to be in the just us category. And the problem is, often people think of affirmative action as something that's about Black people, for Black people, and so on and so forth, not understanding that this is about all of us being a more successful society here in the United States of America. It's not simply correcting for past ills, but you can't let wounds fester without thinking that there's going to be that the body as a whole is not going to suffer from that. But more, the simple understanding that in a global knowledge-based economy, which we're in now, gone is the country that can control the most, natural resources in their soil, or what. We are a knowledge-based society. The smarter your population is, the more educated your population, the better they do. And I say that to say that this thought that we in America can succeed as Team America against Team China or Team whatever groups you want to say, and disadvantage certain people or leave certain people on the sidelines, and win is outrageous. And the problem we have right now is we still don't understand, because I don't think we're doing enough to educate all of us to understand why the legacies of a bigotry and racism and disadvantage are undermining our economic strength and are being compounded by other systems of injustice, like a mass incarceration system, which is invading community. I'm the only United States senator that lives in a Black and brown community. My census tract actually is below the poverty line for the last 25 years. And I grew up in a wealthy, affluent area in New Jersey. And there's no difference between the young people's rates of using marijuana in my more affluent community and in my African-American community I live now, but the arrest rates are wildly different. And nobody thinks through the fact that if there's no difference between Blacks and whites for using marijuana or selling marijuana, actually, but Blacks are arrested at 4 times the rate, that actually has a multiplier effect when it comes to the economic well-being of a community, because once you have a criminal arrest for marijuana, you can't get a job at a McDonald's, for crying out loud. And so you're economically disadvantaging entire families, communities, for things that multiple presidents have now admitted doing. And so all of these things are being baked into a system that is producing results that don't provide for our strength. So when you talk about higher ed, and you look at all of these things and how they undermine a level playing field, and you understand that in an educational environment, the more diversity, the better that environment is. Don't take my word for it. Take McKinsey, a big consulting company, Harvard, I hate to quote Harvard, but Harvard Business School, and a lot of other institutions have shown diverse teams do better. When you take hidden figures out of the shadows, connect them with NASA astronauts, you literally become the first country to go to the moon. And so I put that's how I put education in context. This idea that you're creating a system that doubles down on inequities of the past, that doesn't find a way to create thriving, diverse environments, that still, as you said so pointedly, that still gives advantage to legacies. My great-grandfather didn't have the same opportunity to go to Harvard, I'm sorry, as some other people's great-grandfathers or grandfathers. We need systems so we can compete in the world that create, that mine the talent and the genius of everyone, because there's as many geniuses being born in the lowest income parts of Newark as there are in the highest income parts of New Jersey.
That's so powerful. I want to throw it over to Arden, who has, I mean, there are a number of great questions.
Aidan, I shouldn't do this, but we had a hearing today on book bans. All the books banned around the country, and this is what gets me. I'm maybe getting too personal, but so I was born in 1969. And my parents were moving from DC, where I am now. They met after college, married here, tried to move to New Jersey, and they wouldn't let my family move into neighborhoods with the best public schools, which happened to be white neighborhoods. And so my parents had this great organization, Black people and white people, that met together in a living room, created community of activism. They would send white couples out to follow my parents to see if they were turned away from a house. They were told it was sold, lied to, it was pulled off the market. The white couple would find out it was still for sale. And in the house I grew up in, they were told it was sold. The white couple found out it was still for sale. And they put a bid on the house. The bid was accepted. On the day of the closing, the white couple didn't show up. My father did, and a young lawyer named Marty Friedman. They confronted the real estate agent, who didn't give up. He gets up and punches my father's lawyer in the face and sticks a Doberman pinscher on my dad. So legal letters sent back and forth, but we end up moving into this amazing town. Actually ended up being a very nurturing town for my childhood. But my dad used to call us the 4 raisins in a tub of sweet vanilla ice cream. We were very different. Now, my parents, African-American parents, wanted to make sure that their son, 2 sons, raising Black boys, you need to make sure that they understand their culture and their heritage, their beauty, because they're going to be around people and media that has a different beauty myth. They did a lot. But even with my parents' influence, I still remember what it meant to me to read Malcolm X's autobiography. The powerful influence it had on me to read from James Baldwin to Maya Angelou. I mean, these authors were like lifelines to me that helped me not only affirm who I am, my culture, my identity, our collective history, but it also celebrated it in a way that made me feel proud. And I'm telling you, as great as my school system was, we were not learning about and understanding the nuances, the wretchedness, the darkness of a lot of the corners of American history. And so when I find out that one of my favorite books, James Baldwin's Fire Next Time, was banned, it is taking books that have been on shelves since I was in high school, that suddenly now people don't want them there because what? Because of what? Because they don't want to confront the ugliness and the truth of our history that actually makes us a better country. America is great because of what we overcame, not a Disney-fied version of our nation that sanitizes, homogenizes, and that whitewashes our history. So many of our great heroes, like those Black folks and white folks that helped my parents get into a home, getting rid of stories like that diminishes us. But it's even worse. What I said in the hearing today was that I remember when my class, my AP English class, read The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. Because my mom would say, I would have bought these books for you. They were banned, maybe they're taking them out of the school, but we would have bought the books for you. But what was more important for my Black mother was that my peers had access to these books, because they're just as important for white Americans, Asian Americans, Latino Americans as they are for Black Americans. And then the last part I said in my time this morning, which I think is so important, is then I go to college. And around my freshman year, sophomore year, I started working on a suicide crisis hotline. Now, I'm a kid that grew up in the 80s. And you want to talk about like oppressive environments for LGBTQ communities? I was stunned that I went back to my high school, when I was in my 20s and they had a P flag. I was like, oh my God, we've got a P flag here. But I'm on the phone counseling people on a suicide crisis hotline on Stanford's campus. And I was shaken by how many LGBTQ kids who were calling, coming out, who felt suicidal, who would tell stories of the viciousness that they faced, discrimination that they faced, but every once in a while mention the power of reading a book or finding something that showed them they weren't alone, that they were a part of a great history in our country, from Stonewall to Harvey Milk in San Francisco. And so I just have to say right now, we cannot be a nation at war with ourselves. The most powerful forces in a democracy, a lot of people mistake their activism. They think their activism is about who they hate, as opposed to their activism being about what they build. We started this by saying building community. You cannot create a vibrant democracy without a more beloved community, without more empathy, without more understanding, without more truth-telling. That's how you get to a higher and a better love in America. And this forces now that are trying to take all of this away from us, it is such a destructive force in democracy, and create these environments around our school boards in America where the hatred and the viciousness and the conflict it is tearing our communities apart over what? Over attempts to whitewash our history in ways that are so destructive. If we as a people, as a country, are to ever not only just know we stand on great foundation, but also do the hard work of making this a more perfect union. I'm sorry to go off like that.
No, that was. I mean, there is so much there, and I want to make sure that was just incredible. And I know Sabine's hand is up, so we'll throw it over to them.
Hey, yeah, I have done a significant amount of research on book bans, on people protesting and harassing people who attend drag queen story hours. I want to highlight that this is, in essence, a vocal minority. This is not most Americans. This is not the average American. And I think that the amount of screen time they get, amount of media coverage, the organization in which they manufacture the illusion that they are more people than they are, I think is also a really important factor. I know personally when I'm online, when I'm consuming content, even though I am progressive and I've built a progressive space and a progressive algorithm on like TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, I still get disproportionately fed a lot of extreme right-wing, far-right content, very much against my will. And I think that there is, I feel that there is a shortage of progressive content, progressive information, and countering disinformation that there just isn't, I feel like, a lot online. I feel like there's a massive, gap in content in that area.
I mean, Sabine, that's like, you're humbling me. That's such an insightful point. Like, there's a lack of proportionality, right? And a lot of the media were fed. And one of the data points, so whenever I go into a hearing, I get like a big thick book like this, like to prepare for the hearing. And my staff works for hours on it. And if it's a tough day where you have 20 hearings, you may not read everything. But the data I read to prepare for this book ban made your point, like really in deep letters, like the overwhelming majority of Americans on both sides of the aisle actually are against people taking these books out of their school libraries. So we give this disproportional attention to a lot of the negativity. And I want to tell you this, corporations that right now are competing for one of the most valuable things in our economy now, which is your attention, my attention. How do I keep my people's eyes on this screen? They know the kind of things that drive viewership, which is often appealing to these narrow margins, but spark outrage or negative reactions. And I don't know if you guys know the commentator on CNN named Van Jones. Van and I have been friends since I was in law school, and he told me this story. Like, years ago, he was on a show called Crossfire, where they took somebody on the right and somebody on the left, and they go argue it out. And I love what Brene Brown says. She's a writer, gave a great TED Talk, one of my favorite of recent. And she said, it's hard to hate up close, so pull people in. And when he got on this show with Newt Gingrich, the two of them had a lot of things they disagreed on, but the more they talked, the more they started saying, well, I kind of like you, and we have a lot of agreement. And they went to the producers and said, let's do the last segment on and call it Ceasefire and talk about where we agree. And the producers let them start, but then they ran in and stopped them after a few of them and said, you can't do that. Ratings are going down. So the corporate models that are all about your attention want to drive what often they think is the things that will keep people's attention and engagement a lot. And so we're fighting those. Sabine, your truth telling and your nuanced understanding is that kind of a voice is so important, and it may reflect what many of us are yearning for. But these systems that are chasing after corporate profits, they're often going to take the cheap way, which is to tell us how much we should hate each other, tell us how much we should be outraged by each other, but don't represent where the majority of us necessarily stand.
And I think someone who is really on the forefront of doing this work and really trying to protect young people and their digital privacy is Zamaan, who I want to throw it over to now.
Thank you, Aidan. Senator, great to talk to you. I spend a lot of time speaking to your staff, and they're just fantastic. So please pass along my thanks to all of their time. As Aidan said,
thank you guys. Aidan saying thank you.
As Aidan said, I wanted to touch on this question. You spoke very eloquently about the systems in place that allow corporate algorithms to continue to charge hyper-targeted negative messages at people who either don't want to be seeing them or are spending too long on these platforms. And so oftentimes what we see is that while social media can be a great tool to getting your message out there, and I say that as somebody who is an activist who uses social media, but is also fighting the same thing. My question for you is what role can Congress and the government play in this area? We've seen so much conversation now around the impact of harmful algorithms, and we've heard testimony time and again about the impacts of Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram on younger users. How can we protect the status quo of we're building community online, but not at the expense of safety, which is costing us kids' lives or developing eating disorders, etc.
Well, Zamaan, I was told this was going to be a conversation, so I'm going to take this as my first opportunity to turn a question back on somebody, because I know you spend a lot of time and have formed these sort of platforms and organizations, or part of them, to deal with this issue. And there's a debate amongst my Democratic colleagues about how to approach this. And so I'm just curious in the spread of debate, because there are people that want to ban some of these platforms from being accessible from kids in grade school or high school. And so I'm just curious if you were, I don't know what state you're in right now. What state are you in right now?
I'm in Illinois.
So thank God you're not from New Jersey. If you were the senator from Illinois, I didn't want to say senator from New Jersey. I didn't want the competition. But if you were a senator from Illinois, I mean, sincerely, what would be some of the first things you would want to do?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think the challenges in this area are around how do we continue to allow access while also putting in place the safeguards. So I think from my perspective, we've seen a range of proposals that have come through in Congress. Proposals that aim to require parental consent or put in place a blockage or a barrier to allowing young people online is not the solution, because we see there's all the hypotheticals you can already put to that about what about families who don't have parents? What about families who don't have active parents? Parents who don't have the time to spend figuring out whether a platform is safe for their child to get on or not. Those are the challenges that we see, and I haven't seen those questions fully answered. I do think the status quo isn't working, though, and that's why we've continued to do our advocacy in this space and will continue to do so. My co-chair, Emma Lemke, testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee on this very issue, and we've taken an approach about privacy and safety by design, where you're building platforms that are supposed to turn off those addictive features and algorithms, especially for younger users. I think there's a short and long term here. Short term, kids need protections online. That's like a fundamental basic value that I think most Americans, and polling suggests, most Americans think is necessary. But the longer term view is we're creating silos of the internet where anyone under the age of 18 has strong privacy provisions. And then the second you turn 18 or 19, then all of a sudden all the guardrails are off and you are at the whims of these algorithms all over again. So I think from my perspective, I would love to see mandates and requirements around what kind of tools and what kind of products these social media companies can create, especially for younger users, where we don't see those harmful defaults, for example, enabled, where we don't see endless data collection on kids and teens. But also keeping in mind that these tech companies have said that they are trying to do this and have skirted their responsibility for years and years.
So, but I would push back a little bit. So I'm with you. Like I see what young disruptors are doing that is so positive, and I'm an avid social media user. And sometimes when I'm on, scrolling on Instagram, I'm blown away by and inspired, frankly, and informed by your generation on a lot of issues. Yet at the same time, I have to be frank with you. If I had a child and they were 14, 15, I would do everything I could to keep them off of these platforms. I just would. I've read study after study about the impact it has on self-concept, self-esteem, the correlations between mental health issues. I would just try to keep them off as long as I possibly could. And that feels a little hypocritical to me. And I haven't figured out how you navigate, because if I told you, forget that it's social media, it's just, hey, there's a product that is going to have this percentage of young girls who use this product are going to have this kind of outcome, and so on and so forth, you would ban that product. We would all probably say that's worse than cigarette smoking in terms of that. We would ban it. So it's just hard for me. I have young people come up to me often about thoughtful movements. Like, we think in this city you should be able to vote at 16. And when they come at me, they know more about the issues at 16 than some people I know that are in their 40s. So I just don't. I have not figured out I've got multiple Democratic colleagues trying to get me on their bills. I know you've been talking to some of my team, but I'm sincerely telling you right now, there are some things I know that are that we need to do that are sort of like small ball, but I don't know how to solve for this. And again, the lobbyists here for all these tech companies, they're very motivated to keep their profit model that they have right now as well. And it doesn't often align with the best interests of our children.
Amazing. So we are about halfway through. Next time, we'll make sure that we do a lightning round, but I do want to make sure that everyone can get their question in. So I want to jump to Arden, who I am sure has some very interesting thoughts on kind of the intersection of a lot of the issues that we've been talking about, and what legislators can do to protect young people, or whatever they would like to ask.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to first off say thank you so much for the work you're doing on ag policy. I really value that work, and I don't think it's sufficiently prioritized. But I want to shift topics and ask a question about biosecurity. The international body known as the UN Biological Weapons Convention is responsible for the global ban on bioweapons, and it has a budget of only $1.4 million, which is less than the average McDonald's. As someone on the Foreign Relations Committee, how do you think we can strengthen the governance of synthetic biology and thereby reduce the risk of future pandemics?
So I do spend a lot of issue on this issue, and I just want to give a nod that this actually is an ag issue as well, because a lot of these wet markets, our country's overuse of antibiotics. This is one of the greatest national health issues that people aren't talking about, which is antibiotic-resistant bacteria coming from most of the antibiotics used in the United States are used on animals prophylactically. In other words, to prevent them from getting disease. In England, Europe, they're saying that that's crazy because you're creating these pathogens that will kill people. And so you have literally tens of thousands of Americans die every year from antibiotic-resistant strains. And the fear is that these bugs are learning to deal with all the things we have to kill them, to stop them from killing us. And the future great pandemics could be that. So these are real real crises in our world. And if we don't start changing the way we raise animals in these massive factory farms where these diseases spread, where they often create conditions in which large lagoons of pig feces or mountains and mountains of chicken feces also poison our groundwater and our well water, creating environments for bacteria and more. A lot of you all know that the theory is that a lot of the avian flus and the like are coming from international wet markets, but we are creating that environment here. So this is something that really does worry me, and it's something that, frankly, is real. And I've got legislation that I hope that you'll look at, not just because you're interested in these issues, but you go to, I hear, a really great university, like the Ag Accountability Act that we've done. But you're right about bioweapons and biosecurity, that there are a lot of dangerous actors out there that don't need what you might have needed in past generations, which is the weight of a state doing it. It's creating an environment where people can get their hands on materials that could poison the water of an entire city or beyond, and that can create pathogens that could threaten large swaths of humanity. And I did not know the data point that you gave me, which sort of humbled me, about the amount of money we spend on it relative to the size of the problem, which I'd really want to find out more. And my staff, if you can hear behind them, are scribbling down right now. So I'm going to look at that. My collegiate colleague, but this is something that concerns us a lot, and we're really leaning in to try to prevent the kind of things that we don't think, that most people aren't thinking of, that could end up threatening humanity.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And it might be worth checking out Kevin Esfeld's lab. He's up at MIT and doing some great technical work and research on technologies that we could create to prevent the next pandemics and biosurveillance.
I will. And what year are you at Stanford?
I'm just going to be entering in a few days.
Well, if you want to come to my office one summer and just do this work for us as a intern, my chief of staff over here actually does pay. And that probably goes to just about everybody on here, because I think we would love to get a chance to have some incredible young talent like I'm hearing here asking extraordinary questions. So thank you.
I would love to. Thank you so much.
Amazing. I feel like I'm on Oprah. Everyone gets an internship. I'm going to throw it over now to Kyle.
Hi. First of all, just thanks a ton for being here. It's really awesome to get to talk to you. Just kind of following up on the conversation we were just having about, kind of the bioweapons and stuff. We talked a bit about what happens inside the country, and you said you also like to look up and stuff on foreign policy. So I was wondering what you think we should do about stuff that comes from outside this country. Like, COVID was obviously a huge thing. It impacted not only the US, but the world. And we now know that more than likely came from a lab leak over in China. And the question is really like, what do we want to do about that? What do you think? Like, my question to you is, what do you think we should do about that? Do you think the US should inject themselves to do more to prevent stuff like that? Like, what do you think we should do in order to prevent situations like COVID from happening in the future that stem from similar causes?
Like, I can't tell you how much the overwhelming answer I want to yell is yes. The America has to take that role. There is a competition going on the planet. I already talked about us versus them versus just us. The other competition is how do we organize ourselves as people from democracies or authoritarian governments? And unfortunately, in a global scale, we should understand as people who share common democratic values, we can have a lot of argument about how we want to organize our democracy, which we clearly are having in America. But the commitment to certain democratic principles is something we share with a lot of other nations. But there is a unfortunate stumbling of democracies all around the globe right now, from Hungary, inarguably, I think Turkey, countries that are democracies that are sort of falling back towards their authoritarian tendencies. I think that Donald Trump was one of the people that was pushing us, eroding democratic institutions and norms, not to mention storming instigating the storming of the Capitol. And the reason why I say this as a run-up to answer your question is because there are a lot of us, democracies, that are trying to form a rules-based world order where certain rules are created with how we deal with threats to humanity, whether it's climate change, whether it's nuclear energy, nuclear power, nuclear proliferation, whether it's bioweapons or what have you. And so democracies are very eager to create institutions, world institutions, that govern a lot of these issues. It's the authoritarian governments that are often the ones that are violating these world-based rules orders, or have, unfortunately, often very scary ambitions when it comes to these kind of bioweapons, access to nuclear weaponry, and more. And so a lot of what we're doing is trying to and by the way, there's rules-based order on everything governing the internet, financial systems, and it's all not, frankly, always what I would want us to do, because I think there's still colonialism in its modern form taking place with a lot of countries, and other ways that these systems are being influenced by, I think, greed and corporate greed and the like. But my big belief right now is we've got to start thinking as a human species about what is the best of protecting humanity, protecting this planet, and creating a fairer playing field globally. And I will bet on democracies all the time for being the better force to protect that. And that doesn't mean we're always right, but at least in a democratic system, people who disagree with that have mechanisms with which to make power yield. In the democracies, the best aspect of democracies is the power of the people is always greater than the people in power. And if the people decide to use that power effectively, they can shape the democracy's role, not just within the country, but within the world.
And I think that as we're building this this transformative and imaginative democracy, I think naturally the question falls about the role of young people in it. And I know that Avalon has some thoughts or question on this.
Thanks for passing it off, Aidan. And before I start, Senator Booker, I wanted to say that my professor and mentor at Columbia, Paula Francisi, she's a housing attorney. She's really spoken so wonderfully about you. And I was thrilled to get the chance to chat with you, just to tell you that she, in every class I've been in with her, has such nice things to say about you.
Well, let me just say something that I really do believe this, whether good or bad, what we say about other people is more of a reflection of who we are than who they are. And she's a woman of incredible grace and power. And I have learned a lot from her as well, even though she hasn't formally been my professor, but really has helped me around housing issues in particular.
Yeah, of course. Your anecdote earlier in this call made me think of that. But my real question is, as a Gen Zer who has been working in policy and activism and at the intersection of tech and ethics, I've felt a lot of enthusiasm around what my generation is capable of, what we do, our unique perspective, our passion. But I also think that there's something to be said about also being practical, realistic, and understanding that every generation has its flaws. So I'm curious to hear from your perspective as a more senior policymaker. What are ways that you think that Gen Z needs to improve in our advocacy and in the way that we message our passion around issues to make sure that the change we're making is actually long lasting and isn't just us shouting into a void because that's what we've been told that we're good at?
Wow, that's a heck of a question. And it also puts me in the uncomfortable position of making generational broad, paint a generation with a broad brush. As was said at the top of this conversation, Gen Z is so diverse and in every way. I'm not just talking about ethnically or religiously, but also diversity of views. And it's hard for me to sort of advise a generation that gives me hope that a lot of the narrowing of my thinking of the field of possibilities is re-expanded by a generation of people that don't subscribe to the limitations that often older people do. I just, again, I familiarized myself with a number of you before I got on this call, and I just felt a glow inside because you guys are entrepreneurs in the social space. And I just want you to keep doing that and not letting yourself ever believe. And by the way, incremental change, like the Farm Bill right now is, I've you know, my staff and I, we had a strategy session. Let's blow it up. You know, like we were like and then we realized that's not, no, let's try to get singles and doubles done in this Farm Bill, because I could connect a lot of those singles and doubles to making a big difference when I come home to Newark. You know, like we created a 3-acre urban farm when I was mayor of the city, and I go back there from time to time and see the impact that some of my farm policy, creating people that can now use their food stamps or their SNAP dollars to buy double the food at farmers markets, how it's created more people going there. And I was there recently, and some of the women came up to me and talked about curing their diabetes and reversing, like literally a small little program helping to save lives and banish disease. And so I just, the only thing I want to say to you is that two things. It is good to demand and think to swinging from the fences, but when I try to read the people that most inspire me and read a lot about their lives. That's why I know a lot about the civil rights movement. They were also tactical and practical, and really, they expanded the moral imagination of a country, but they also found ways to get real wins. And sometimes they took many, many years. I think that, you know, if there's anything I had to say generationally, is really just never forget that change doesn't come from Washington. It comes to Washington by the activism of people. And your power is always going to be, as a generation, as individuals, as communities that you cultivate, it's going to come from you all just saying, I have power. No matter what you think, I have power. And the great thing about it, it was very generous to say about me being one of the early innovators on social media. But I got on Twitter in 2009 and knew that it could be a revolutionary force in politics, where I could disintermediate the media and go straight to the people in a way. And so we use a platform. Twitter used to use us in their advertising in the early days because we were finding such creative ways to create a platform which any citizen could come on and tell me about something wrong in the city. I didn't want people just driving by their streets and see a pothole and say somebody should fix that. I wanted them to tweet the mayor, and I would respond on it and show them that I could fix your potholes. While in previous years it took me months, I could get it done in hours. And it became this great thing I called we government, not e-government, but we government. But it also, I felt, had this activating where people said, wait a minute, I have power. I can demand change. I can speak to change. And the story I want to end with on this point is that because you all are taking this story I'm about to tell you and taking it to whole new levels. I've seen some of the traction you all are getting, some of the breakthrough videos. But I was mayor of Newark, which was so disrespected by people, looked down upon. Oh, don't go there, it's so dangerous. All these things that people wanted to, so in such a dark way, talk about my community. And it really annoyed me at a time that I was trying to expand opportunity, bring in investment, create jobs, stimulate entrepreneurs. And I knew I had to change the media narrative around my city as a place to stay away from, to a place to invest in, to partner with community-based organizations to do things. So long story short is, I'm at home one night watching The Tonight Show. And back then it was hosted by Conan O'Brien, who comes out and says, I hear Newark, New Jersey has a new healthcare program. And I had just done something to lower pharmaceutical prices for my residents, and I was proud of it. And so I thought, oh my God, I'm getting mentioned on The Tonight Show, Newark? And then he goes, well, I think the best healthcare program for the city of Newark is a bus ticket out of town. And I just remember, I'm like, oh God. But immediately I was thinking differently in media. So I thought to myself, I gotcha. And I went to City Hall the next day and sat behind my desk, had like a recent college graduate stand there with a little video, phone or whatever it was at that time. And I just said, hey, I'm very serious. I'm a Cory Booker. I'm the mayor of Newark, New Jersey. And then I talked about how great my city is. And I said, Conan O'Brien, the host of The Tonight Show, has insulted our city. And thereby, by the power vested in me, by the people of the city of Newark, I hereby ban Conan O'Brien from Newark Airport. You're on the no-fly list. Try JFK, buddy. And it was a joke, but I put it online and the video went viral. It went so viral that literally, like, I'm getting angry calls from civil libertarians telling me that I can't willy-nilly put somebody on a no-fly list. We had cameras now in front of City Hall, satellite trucks, not because somebody got murdered, but to figure out what was going on. The TSA, I'm not exaggerating, clarified on their website that mayors in America don't have the power to put people on the no-fly list. It started to become one of the bigger stories of that week in America. And then Conan O'Brien goes on The Tonight Show and plays my video that now had been seen by hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. Now he plays it to his 2.5 million viewers. And then he says, Cory, you want to ban me from Newark Airport? By the power vested in me by a studio audience, I'm banning you from Burbank Airport. And I'm like, I fly LAX anyway, but okay. And it was on. Before you know it, I film another video. This story gets bigger and bigger. And now the mayor of Newark, New Jersey is getting invited on every big show, from afternoon chew and chat shows to Larry King and late night CNN shows, bragging about my city, getting great earned media, but also carrying on this fight. It ended because this woman who was in charge of literally finding peace around the world, healing war-torn areas, she was a Secretary of State for the United States of America, Hillary Clinton, filmed her own video that she posted basically saying, Cory, Conan, give peace a chance. And next thing you know, I'm invited on The Tonight Show, where Conan O'Brien apologizes to the city of Newark, gives us $500,000 for charities in Newark, and puts us in a position where now suddenly the city's getting a lot more attention, positive attention, and I'm able to call businesses, investments, and stuff like that, and get more investment in my city. It was a disruption. It was creative thinking. At a time that we were in a global recession, we found ways to expand our parks when other cities were cutting back, get resources for affordable housing that other cities were losing. And so what I'm saying to you is that you all have a creativity and an imagination and power that my generation might not even been thinking about, because we're not mastering tools or innovators in the same way that Dorothea Cotton and James Bevel were the young innovators of their time that captured national media attention that helped to advance radical change. You all have that power as well. And don't turn to a middle-aged bald guy to get advice about what to do. But I hope if there's anything I can inspire you, is that you have to do it, because young generations in their teens and 20s before you, going back to the Alice Paul and the suffragettes I talked about, have taken on their responsibility, saying, I'm not going to yield to the injustices around me. I'm going to access my power and change the reality, bend that arc of the moral universe.
That was an incredible story, and I think we also learned a lot about where your disdain for Harvard graduates comes from through that story. So we have about 5 minutes left. We are gonna do as much as we can rapid fire with incredibly nuanced questions. So I want to make sure everyone goes.
Shorter answers. It's my fault.
So here we're gonna go. We're gonna go. Okay, Mukilan, you're up. Ask whatever you would like.
Yeah, so Senator Booker, you spoke earlier about strengthening our democratic values, which really is a through line of all the questions asked today. You're currently a co-sponsor of the recently reintroduced Freedom to Vote Act. How confident are you that we can actually see this bill or similar ones enacted into law in the near future and win our democracy back from voter suppression efforts across the country? And how else can we work to strengthen our electoral system and reduce the impact of money in politics?
It's none of those great bills you're talking about are passing in this Congress. And my staff sometimes gets mad at me when I just like lay it plain like that. But with McCarthy in charge of the House, they're not going to pass those bills. But that doesn't mean we don't advocate for them. It means that we keep fighting for them and educating people, because I know the insidious nature of money in politics is something that's hated by people on both sides of the aisle. When you say it's a Democratic bill, people get like dig in. But when you talk about what's in some of these pieces of legislation, people support it. People on both sides of the aisle don't like gerrymandering. Both sides of the aisle think that corporations are not people and shouldn't be able to give so much money to politicians. And in the meantime, challenge your elected officials. When I came to Washington, I didn't have any restrictions. I abided by the rules that govern our democracy. Okay, this is who I can take money from. This is who I couldn't. And a lot of young people said to me, "Why are you taking money from corporate PACs?" And so I became the fourth senator that said, you know what, you're right. I'm not taking that money. I'm not taking lobbyist money. I'm not taking this. So right now, push, agitate, because that's what the 1965 Civil Rights Act, they didn't get that at the first try. And they didn't get it because Strom Thurmond came to the Senate floor one day and said, I've seen the light, let those Negro people have the right to vote. No, it happened because the power of the people was greater than the people in power. They did not stop fighting and pushing until they got it done.
Amazing. Sonia, heading over to you.
Thank you so much. My question is that recently I've noticed, and I'm sure a lot of us have noticed, increasing concern both on social media and in the news about just how old many of our current government leaders are. And I find that a lot of my peers don't trust that older politicians are interested in our perspectives and a lot of us are worried about the effectiveness of their leadership. And I was wondering if you share that concern and what you think we can do to address this issue.
Look, I'm from baby boomers, God bless them, the extraordinary accomplishments of that generation, but they dominate national politics. And I'm a younger generation than the Senate. I think I'm like 2 decades. I'm a lot younger than the average age in the Senate. And I want to see new young leaders coming into these offices. Like, look, Senate, you got to be 30, but we should be seeing a lot more 29 and 30-year-olds run. Guess what? Joe Biden got elected to the Senate at 29. He did. And so my thinking is that there's so many young people who should be running for office, doing the very hard thing of putting their name on the line and getting involved. And so, my chief of staff is over here saying, Max Frost, mention Max Frost, yay. I mean, there are a lot of very young people that are doing it, that are jumping in. But I really want to just encourage you to encourage Gen Zers to run for office. And if you're not the person running, but you see somebody that really represents you, then get involved in helping them. I ran to be the youngest person elected in my city, and I won by like 36 votes because I had a lot of high school students and others who, as well as senior citizens, who joined my campaign, and we upset the political machine. Please have people run. Please encourage people to run. Please put your name out there and run yourself for a school board, for a city council seat, run for mayor, run for House, run for Senate when you hit to be the 8th that Biden did it back when he was the young up and comer glass ceiling breaker in terms of just youth, and bringing that to the Senate when it was desperately needed, and it's desperately needed now.
Amazing. As short as possible for these people. Hannah, you're up.
Cool. I want to recognize your incredible work towards criminal justice, kind of pivot back to that, specifically your announcement of the Rehabilitation and Recovery During Incarceration Act, which aims to increase access to mental health and substance use resources for incarcerated individuals, is particularly important given the challenges that these individuals and the correctional facilities face. Could you elaborate a bit on how this legislation addresses the specific barriers that are the specific barriers caused by the Medicaid inmate exclusion provision, and what outcomes you hope to achieve by offering coverage of mental health and substance use services to these individuals, and then how we as a generation as well can help support this legislation and give it the potential to improve these individuals' lives. Sorry, that's a hefty
I'm going to answer this as quickly as possible, as long as I can get Aidan a promise that we can get like a selfie or a picture here, so I can remember this. So as long as you leave time for that. We're the land of the free, but we incarcerate more individuals than any other country on the planet Earth. We're in fact, we're only 5% or 4% of the globe's population, but we have 25% of the prison population. 1 out of every 3 incarcerated women on the planet Earth are in the United States of America. And then when they're in prison, we often do things to them that make them, and by the way, we overwhelmingly incarcerate the low income, the drug addicted, the mentally ill, Black and brown people. And then we put them in environments, and children, by the way, and we put them in environments that that compound their crises, activate their trauma, make their struggles with mental health even worse. And so the question is what should we be doing? First of all, we shouldn't be locking so many people up. And then what should we be doing when people are incarcerated to empower them to a journey of health and well-being? Because most people go to prison are coming out, but we do things that make the recidivism rate, the rate at which they come back, intolerably high, because we don't, after somebody's paid their debt to society, as some people like to say it, we don't do enough to help them return home and to succeed and thrive. And so the Medicaid issue that you're talking about is about a continuum of healthcare that stays in place during the time they're incarcerated, so that their medications and their treatments while they're in prison stay constant and until when they're out of prison, incarcerated as well. But the thing I beg you for that great question is, most Americans don't understand what's going on, Hannah, in criminal institutions. Now, there's a lot of innovations going on that are phenomenal, but I'll give you one example. When I went into when I became senator, I went to a women's federal prison, and I was supposed to get a tour of the whole thing. But as soon as I got into sort of their general population area, I ended up just sitting talking to the women who were telling me these horrific stories. The warden told me that most of the women, like 90%, were survivors of sexual trauma and violence. And then they come into an environment where people aren't trained, the correctional officers aren't trained to deal with people that are survivors of violence, and would do things to compound their violence. The women told me about having to make their tampons because they couldn't afford to buy them from the commissary. And the reason why they would try to make them is because they wanted to save their pennies so they could call their children. When all the evidence shows you, first of all, the menstrual equity, I hope this is an issue from high schools all the way to the taxes that are being put on menstrual products in America. But in our prisons, it's ridiculous that a healthcare product is being denied people, and that they're being charged for it and not able to talk to their children, which all the data shows that women who are empowered to better connect with their children have lower recidivism rates as well as their children. I'm going to stop there, but because there's so much about our American prison system that would not be acceptable to the majority of Americans, that they just knew what went on in these institutions and engaged more in this understanding that there are no throwaway people, that somebody does not lose their humanity when they go to jail, and that we, to circle us full circle, are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a common garment of destiny. You can't give injustice to people in prison without having that injustice revisit upon you as well.
Senator Booker, that was incredible, and I just want to ask you, given that there were three people, Connor, Parker, and Olivia, who didn't have a chance to ask questions. So I'm hoping that there's some way that they can reach out to your staff, and in some way get an answer from you.
Up when you said you brought them in, they're like,
okay, amazing. And so I'm sure their questions were amazing, and I want to make sure that they do get responses. I know that there's there is actually the shortest possible question that someone messaged me. So I want to give Olivia just the chance to ask this. You'll see why I'm allowing.
Okay.
I have a very pressing, very urgent question that when I told all my friends that I was going to get the chance to ask Senator Cory Booker a question, this was what they all wanted to know. So what is your favorite Taylor Swift song?
That's hard to say. My staff and I have hilarious conversations about it all the time. I was running to one this morning on one of my psych tapes, but I would say probably Champagne Problems.
It's a good choice. I approve.
Thank you very much.
Amazing.
Thank you.
How should we do this selfie? If everyone, I mean, I guess it's recording. So if we all smile. Oh, actually, presumably you want to take some sort of selfie.
Well, I'd like to do a real selfie here, which is sort of like
amazing. The analog option.
Yeah. So I'm going to take a picture of the screen right now. I need to get the camera out of the screen. Okay, there we go. I'm going to look up. Awesome. I'm going to do one this way too, because I think it's kind of cool. Okay. So we got it.
Amazing. We are so appreciative of your time, and hopefully we can get an email from your staff so that Connor, Parker, and Olivia can get you those questions. Yeah.
And I'm all serious about that. If some of you are interested in coming to the Hill, we do have an internship program. It's an application process, but I have a feeling a lot of you would fly through that. And anybody can help that actually come down. And it's good to come down as a young person, whether it's a high school page or intern on the Hill. Even if it's not with our office, we always try to help expose a lot of people who don't traditionally come to the Capitol to get this experience.
I just want to say, Cory, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Appreciate it. See you soon.
Okay. So yeah, thank you so much. This was incredible, and I know we're all just so grateful.
Thank you. Deep breath. I hope to see a lot of you in person along the road.
All right, everybody. We will put this out. You'll all get an email letting you know when it's going to stream. And it's, I think, going to be really, really exciting for people to watch. So,
and if anybody wants to do collabs on your own platforms, I would love that. We have good followings on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. We love always thinking of creative ways of reaching different audiences, partnering, cross-pollinating folks. So please let my team know if you're interested in doing it. And we, if any of you follow me on social media, you know we're willing to do silly things too, to try to drive points home. I literally had one of my Senate colleagues pretty much throw me through a wall. I should have gotten a stunt double. So if you have creative thoughts about things that we could do, that would be fun too. So thank you. And Steve, you're welcome in Newark Airport anytime.
You know, I was worried you were going to say I was banned. So thank you.
No, sir.
All right. We'll talk soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
So even though we ran out of time, people still had a few extra questions, and Cory answered them. Here is the bonus round.
As a fellow crisis text line volunteer and mental health activist, I'm curious about your views on the youth mental health crisis. What can we do as young people to maintain hope for the future?
Hey, Connor, it's Cory. I was really blown away by your question because I worked on a crisis hotline center when I was in college, and that connection is moving. And I can only imagine the experiences you're having. When I was there, it blew me away, the demand and the challenges. And in many ways, as we ran this service, the demand for it was going up and up and up. And this was in the 80s and 90s. Now we're seeing an unprecedented level of mental health challenges for our young people. I just was looking at some of the data about 1 in 3 college women feeling anxiety, 1 in 5 experiencing depression. The challenges are getting greater and greater. And I think they're being exacerbated by things that you know, from the COVID pandemic to the rise of social media. There's a lot more coming at our young people and creating challenges. And I can imagine that this is a sobered reality that you are facing on the front lines as a foot soldier and trying to figure out how to do something, how to create a successful movement to meet this challenge. In the Senate, I haven't forgotten about it. I've joined with my colleagues. In fact, I was talking with one today about forming a mental health caucus. We've done a lot in past bills, making unprecedented investments in youth mental health into our schools and more, but it's still not enough, nowhere near enough. But I will tell you, you use that word hope. And I think a lot about that word hope. I think about it because in my life, I have to say I've explored the depths of despair at times, seeing the most intractable problems, from on the front lines, the ravages of gun violence and death, to the helplessness I have felt before when people I knew succumbed to suicide. I've learned that hope is not some kind of like Pollyannish vision about, oh, things are going to be all right. That hope is a choice, and it's a conviction that despair will never have the last word. And so the best hope I can give you is you, sincerely. Your power amidst all the challenges that you're seeing, and determination to be an agent of hope, to be someone that in an infectious way starts to spread this desire to fight against these challenges, to do things that make a difference. Whether it's just in the community you consciously create, a more beloved community that looks after people and takes care of each other, or pushing your college to provide more resources, or creating a movement that goes to state policies and federal policies. You are hope. In many ways, your question alone gives me more hope that we're going to be able to meet this challenge that's affecting in such serious ways the mental health of our young people in America and beyond today.